Us ultra runners are pretty proud of the stupid things we do. We tend to look at the next race, and the dumber it seems, the more it appeals to us. 2017 and 2018 were my best years of ultra running yet, with 11 ultras run each year. And this year's been even better. I completed my hardest race ever, Cloud Splitter, about 8 weeks ago. I already had 12 ultra marathons done and was really just looking for a 50K to wrap up December. My goal had become to finish an ultra every month, and I had also set out to get a PR number of 100-mile finishes, and had already done that. The max I'd ever done in 1 year was 3. I already had 5 done, and just really nothing left to prove for 2019. But as I looked for something stupid to do in December, a race kept popping back onto my radar. The Falls 100 inaugural was in 2018. At the 100-mile distance, there were only 3 finishers, and they had horrible weather, lots and lots of rain. The Rough River flooded. The race is based out of the Falls of Rough, right off the Rough River by the waterfall and the mill and the mansion. So anyhow, last year they had to revise the course, include more road and a little bit less flooded trail. In spite of that, only 3 people finished, and so I was more than a little concerned about trying to run the 100-mile. For 2019, they went back to the original course and made it closer to 100 miles. The actual distance was 100.9 miles, 8 loops of 12.6 miles each, so a little bit shorter than last year and more trails than last year, with a cumulative climb of over 16,000 feet on fairly technical trails. So while I was very nervous about the idea of 100 miles in December, winter running at that distance didn't really seem like it was quite in my wheelhouse, but obviously I decided to go for it. Some of the things that offset the challenges a little bit were that we could set up our tent, tarp, or our vehicle as a personal aid station right off the course, pretty close to the start-finish area. And so logistically, that was a big help. And there was one drop bag aid station at approximately 8 miles into the 12.6 mile loop. And they were going to have hot food at the start-finish and at the 8-mile aid station, as well as an opportunity for hot coffee and so forth. This course was going to require my full attention. They allowed up to 36 hours. I was hoping for maybe 32 to 34 hours. So by full attention, that means I was not going to carry a camera. Full attention meant carrying trekking poles the whole way and making it through over 100 miles without falling down, and getting off course only nominally a couple times. Basically, the course was a series of turns over about 1,000 acres of private land. That meant that really the only people we saw out there were associated with the race. There was some pretty serious solitude and some really, really quiet trail out there. The hills, the views, the woods were very beautiful. We had a beautiful moon overhead too, clear enough skies on Saturday night to see gorgeous stars, probably a 3/4 full moon, and just a beautiful moon set late well, late into Sunday morning. The Falls 100 included a half marathon, a marathon, a 50-mile race, and of course the 100-mile race. There were 27 to 29 runners who started to go for the 100-mile distance. Only 8 of us finished. So I came in 6th place, just under 35 hours. While that was slower than I expected, the course was a lot more muddy and challenging than expected, and it definitely got colder Saturday night than expected. As tough as the loops were, 8 loops, I knew there would be quite a few drops. I was expecting maybe 15 finishers. I'm pretty pleased to have the gold finisher buckle, and with a finish ratio below 30%, better than a 70% DNF rate. From that perspective, it was sort of my hardest race yet, although a couple of times I've run a longer number of hours. This course sort of reminded me of Tunnel Hill 100 in the sense that at 50 miles into the race, if you were signed up for the 100-mile distance, you could drop down and get an official finish at the 50-mile distance and get a really nice buckle. In the case of the Falls 100, it was really about the exact same buckle, except it was silver. It seems like we were fairly late into Saturday night or Sunday morning when I got word that the 100-mile distance was already down to 11 runners, which lit an even bigger fire in my belly to get it done. I was excited to be out there with Liz Bauer, who back in 2012 or 2013 set a record by finishing 36 100-mile races in one calendar year. And by chance, Michael Ortiz was also at this race. He was on his 54th weekend of running 100-mile races. So he's setting his own version of a Guinness record with his game of hundos. And there were several other Ohio runners that I was proud to be out there running with. For whatever reasons, one of the race directors seemed to believe in my ability to finish this course more than I did. And of course I wanted to prove him right. So that was a nice source of motivation for me. And I found that they were incredibly accommodative in terms of my food suggestions for the aid stations. I ended up enjoying heated quesadillas loaded with hummus, avocado, chia seeds, and salt. When you're in the hills of Kentucky, a lot of people may not be very familiar with what an all plant-based diet is about. So the aid station support was fantastic, with experienced ultra runners out there really caring about us, trying their darndest to get us through this course. One of the great things about taking part in a race where only 8 people finish the 100-mile distance is the aid station volunteers. They get to know us. We come through there 8 times each, and they tended to kind of get to know my needs even better than I did sometimes. And the aid station captain would know to bring some pickles and avocado. We just felt super supported and had a lot of laughs. It was fun to go through these aid stations. Course markings. The course was marked very well, adequately everywhere and very well in other places. There was one weakness in the course markings that became evident after sunset Saturday, and one of the race directors went out and fixed it right away. So the turns were marked clearly. I wouldn't have minded seeing a few more pieces of tape and confidence marker flags here and there, but most of us had no trouble staying on course. The race directors, Jeff, Greg, and Damon, seem to all have family out there helping. they put so much effort into this, and I know that they were very happy and proud to write a $5,000 check last year and this year to their charity Shop with a Cop that helps local youth at Christmas time. Another fantastic thing that these race directors do is bring in a guest speaker. Last year they had Jason Romero, who I was able to hear speak at the Pistol 100 Ultra a few months after last year's Falls 100. He was the guest speaker at the Pistol. So I knew they bring in a high caliber of guest speaker. This year's guest was Kevin Kline. Him and his wife have raised over $4 million towards efforts to help with pediatric cancer. Now, it just so happened that from quite a few years ago, I knew a young girl with cancer who ran in holding Kevin's hand at his run across Texas. There's a documentary about that called Dear Chelsea. Kevin was just back a couple of weeks ago from his biggest adventure yet, running 300 miles on the Dalton Highway in northern Alaska during winter. Day after day, covering about 30 miles or more per day with 20, 30, and 40 below zero wind chill factors. There will be a new documentary about that adventure, and we could see from the slideshow the film crew got some absolutely amazing footage. Here is a copy of the last documentary, Dear Chelsea, and the organization you can support is called the Snowdrop Foundation. So you can go to snowdropfoundation.org to donate towards helping kids with pediatric cancer, as well as helping to find solutions to that issue. Kevin was out there running with his buddy Frank, doing the marathon, and his wife was volunteering at one of the aid stations as well. So I think they enjoyed their stay at the mansion there by the start, and it was just fantastic to get to meet them. Another one of the dumb things I did was run the entire race in my Huarache style sandals, and had to have my trekking poles to be able to pull that off. This course was an ATV park up until a few months before last year's inaugural ultramarathon. And while the trails have healed to some degree, there have also been a lot of places where it's washed out. So what you have is really slippery clay with washouts. Sometimes 2, 3, 4 feet deep, and narrow little sections of trail to run on. With 8 loops of 12.6 miles each, you get to know the course fairly intimately, which side of the trail ought to be on to avoid the deepest mud holes and where the roughest steps are on the whole course. So while I wanted to come home from the Falls of Rough, Kentucky with the gold and a lot of great memories from an epic race to end a really great year of running, I also came home with some other items. 5 pounds of quinoa and an only slightly empty 1.5 pound container of chia seeds. The race directors had asked for some ideas on plant-based food options, and I think I gave them more than they needed. And now these will serve as a good reminder of a fun race as I fatten up for the next. For the first time in years, I had to step backwards on the course and fish my left sandal out of a mud hole to put it back on. The bridge over the Rough River by the falls was a really cool location for the start finish, and the golf club nearby was a a fine modern facility for the pre-race meeting. As the first person to run the Falls 100 in a pair of Huarache style sandals, I have to say that it's not the ideal type of course due to the clay and slick, sticky mud. So I'll be a little bit surprised to see anybody else try to do that. So thank you, Central Kentucky Race Management, for a fantastic ultra marathon.